When you improve accessibility, you generally improve the user experience for everybody, not just for those people who have a disability.
Meet Maxwell Ivey, a digital accessibility advisor known as the blind blogger. He has been educating people about accessibility for almost 2 decades.
Sadly, a lot of the companies that have the budget and the teams in place to really go all in with accessibility are some of the worst at it.
He believes that accessibility isn't just about compliance, but it's about reputation, innovation, and growth. Because accessibility benefits everyone. That's exactly what Max breaks down today.
Dark mode was originally developed for people with vision loss who still had enough vision to read very large print.
He shares why accessibility benefits your business in 3 major ways, yes, including revenue growth, how anyone can build services, websites, and apps that are actually accessible to everyone out there, but mixing together tools and human touch in order to make it happen. If you want to tap into a huge market, build loyal clients, and have a client-first approach, this is an episode that you don't want to miss. And please share this episode with others, not for my own sake and podcast growth, but for the sake of your friends that are having a website, they run a business, and they can tap into this huge potential. Thank you in advance and enjoy the conversation. Maxwell, welcome to Authority in the Wild.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to us having a great conversation.
Me too, and especially because the topic that we're going to discuss today it's such an overlooked one. Accessibility in the digital space, it's something that, as you well say before starting recording, is just done at the minimum. People don't just do it for the sake of staying quote unquote compliant on paper, but not for truly helping. What do you believe that happens?
I believe part of it is our own doing as a community, people with disabilities. We tend to want things done immediately. We don't have a lot of patience either for the process or even for the other person maybe having better ideas than we do as to how to achieve an inclusive website, app, social media profile, etc. Part of it is just business owners are already overloaded with tasks, many of which they either don't understand or are scared of because there are potential pitfalls to making mistakes with employee relations, accounts receivable, attracting clients. So here comes another thing that is foreign to many of them that they have to do. And basically, they just don't know what they don't know. And so many of them will either throw their hands up in exasperation and quit, or they will hire somebody just to say that they've hired somebody, or they'll use an overlay, which is basically, as one of my friends likes to say, using an overlay is like putting a bandage on a compound fracture. It doesn't even keep the blood flow down because of the severity of the injury. But the one thing I do want most business owners and website developers to know is that I don't believe that they do this out of malice. I don't think they have a vendetta against people with disabilities. Matter of fact, I know that they don't do this on purpose because there are so many people who don't identify as having a disability who also need the same adaptations that I do, including people with invisible diseases like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and also people who they have the same challenges caused by age of vision loss, hearing loss, and loss of motor control, but they'll never see that as a disability. They'll just see it as part of growing old. So it's partly the stress that we put on people, the urgency, and really just emphasizing compliance and the potential negatives so much more than we talk about the potential positive benefits of truly embracing accessibility.
Yeah, I completely agree because I see this firsthand. Like I used to build websites for a living and sometimes I still do. And I see the fact that, as you mentioned, like not every disability it's obvious. There are people with color blindness that they cannot simply differentiate between certain colors and they're like, if you create, let's say, a call to action button that will basically blend in with the background, most people will miss that. And This is not just doing a disadvantage to your business by decreasing the conversion rate, but in the same time, you don't serve that individual because they might be there for a reason, to solve a problem, to get in touch with you, and so on. And how we do proceed here, if you want the stages of awareness that the business owner needs to go through in order to truly see the value of building accessibility first websites.
Right. So I would say the first place we have to start is we have to lean into why people should care about having accessible content in the first place. Because until we give them a good enough why, it doesn't matter how many tutorials or websites there are on the how around the best practices of accessibility. And this is one of the things I feel really makes me stand out in the disability community because I do emphasize the positive more than harping on compliance and lawsuits all the time. And so these are a few things I want business owners and web developers to think about is before you, as you're having these thoughts in your mind or discussing with your team around, do we embed accessibility? Do we build it first from the ground up? How far do we go? So think about, I'm going to give you a few things to think about. So first off, when you improve accessibility, you generally improve the user experience for everybody, not just for those people who have a disability. Some of my favorite examples are dark mode, which is everywhere now on the internet, that was originally developed for people with vision loss who still had enough vision to read large, very large print. And, but because you're reading that large print for long periods of time, it was determined that if you could flip the colors from black text on white background to white text on a black background, it would be more soothing to the eye and allow you to spend more time on the website. So that's something that was done for visually impaired people. It's now everywhere because they figured out that if you give people the option of inverting colors or dark mode, it makes it easier for them to use your website on mobile devices when they're in extremely high or extremely low light, while they're in their bedroom at night, while they're around the pool, while they're at the beach. These are things that the overall online community benefits from that were originally intended just for somebody with vision loss. And so that's the kind of things I want people to think about. One of the things I encourage people to consider is how many items are there on each page or screen of your website or app? Because when you use adaptive technology like I do, I use a screen reader. Some people use screen magnification. Others use mechanical switch devices where they may have a few fingers or they may use a twitch of their eye or they may have a gyroscopic mouse that they maneuver by moving parts of their body. It takes us a lot longer to navigate a website than it does somebody who can just sit there and look at it, scan it, who can navigate with full use of their hands with keyboard or with mouse or hover or swipe. The fewer items you put on a page, especially with forms, the more you break up processes on a website, the more that helps somebody with a disability. But it also really helps people who are using mobile devices where they have a limited amount of screen that they can see at one time. And the more stuff you have, the more stuff they have to scroll across areas of the screen that maybe they'll lose sight of. So when you improve accessibility, you improve the overall user experience. And a lot of times people, when they start the process of investing in accessibility, they'll realize things about their website they just never thought of before because they really don't spend a whole lot of time on their own websites. So that's the number one thing. Number two is when you improve accessibility, you raise your rankings with the search engines and with the AI bots that are crawling the web in larger and larger numbers every day. While these bots can't detect best practices, there are some things they can detect for, like whether or not you're using alt text to describe your images, whether or not you're properly labeling your page title or descriptions keywords. They can detect whether or not you're using heading. They can also detect how many items you have on a screen, whether or not your buttons and links are all labeled clearly with the destination that the link will go to if somebody clicks that button or link. You know, these are things that the search engines can now detect for and give preference to those companies that are at least managing the best practices. And then when you get into AI, the more I learn about AI and accessibility, the more I realize that the AI bots are stupid and they're kind of blind. So, accessibility is one of your best ways to educate them about your website and help them deliver your website to your ideal customers or clients. So that's two. And the third one is when you improve accessibility, you give yourself the opportunity to reach a huge market that is mostly untapped of highly loyal consumers who will advocate for your business or brand. And let me break that down a little. When I say huge group, I'm talking about 1 in 5 or 1 in 6, over a billion people globally, over 60 million people in the US alone. And that's only among people who identify as having a disability. I think we both agree that the ones who identify is just a small part of the total disability community. When you add in people who don't identify, people who mask invisible disabilities out of fear of being stigmatized, and you add in people who have similar challenges due to aging, it's probably more like 1 in 3 that have a disability of some kind themselves. And that doesn't count the people who are friends, family members of somebody with a disability. It doesn't count people in a social media following or on a podcast or YouTube or live streaming following. So the odds are pretty much every person that is on the net right now either has a disability, will have a disability, or knows somebody and cares about somebody who has a disability, or is a socially conscious individual to which inclusion matters of all kinds. Let's basically come to the conclusion that pretty much everybody is in this community, whether they see themselves as part of the disability community or not. And that's just talking about numbers. Then we get to loyalty because so few people invest in accessibility even now. We tend to be very loyal consumers of products, services, and also of content. The latest estimates I'm seeing is somewhere between 3 and 5% of the net is actually accessible right now. And that's after 10 years of a court decision that said the ADA applied to online content. So we respect the ones that are willing to make the effort to invest in accessibility, the ones doing the hard work every day, and we want to see them succeed. We will generally support them during good times and bad times. We often overpay for products in the form of seeing it as a value added proposition because, quite frankly, if somebody has a product or service that we like and they're delivering it in an accessible manner, then those people move to the head of our class. And then that's the loyalty. And then there's the engagement. Because we want to see these companies and website owners succeed, we will advocate for them, we will engage with them, we will promote them, even if they don't ask us to. Because again, we're taking a selfish approach to the internet. Those people that are trying to help us, we want to see them stay around for a long time to come. These are my 3 things about why people should care about accessible content or accessible products or services, and that doesn't even get into the benefits of employing people with disabilities. So those 3 things: improves the overall user experience, raises your search engine and AI bot rankings, and opens up a huge market. So that's the first one. We have to spend more time making sure people understand why they should care, and I hope I did a good job of that.
You absolutely did a wonderful job because while I'm probably in the aware space of this topic, I didn't even think of all the things that you mentioned in the first place. So I think when people see from this angle, they realize that, wait a second, I'm not just helping someone with a disability using my product, service, content, and so on, but I'm actually helping my business as well. Because I think that's probably most of the main reason why businesses don't invest in accessibility compliances, because they're like, oh, this is not a priority. Like you mentioned, they're thinking more about client acquisition, maybe, or they're thinking more about how to increase their revenue and so on. And they overlook was something that they actually can improve quite in theory easy nowadays. And based on that, the return of investment is huge because, as you mentioned, you literally open a huge market, you build loyal fans, you improve your rankings, you help those that actually land on your website convert into paying customers. Like it's a no-brainer in my opinion. And still, I think part of the reason is, yes, there's not enough awareness around it, even that there are laws out there that actually in theory force you to have compliant website, to have compliant content, but still it's still a lot of work to be done.
Right. Let me ask you this. You've been on the side of developing websites, and you probably still pay good attention to whatever the current hot topics are there around web design. I, as a writer and a speaker, I've paid attention to what people are talking about at conferences and what they're writing about. And I would say there's probably 10 times as many people speaking or writing about avoiding compliance than there are speaking about embracing the benefits of inclusion. And I would be curious to see if you think I'm close on those numbers.
Yeah, unfortunately, you are. And I keep on wondering why. Often, I think as human beings, we tend to love to find solutions to quote unquote problems instead of seeing actually the benefits of, because you might look, oh, this might be expensive or this might be that or that. But in reality, like, not sure, and I will ask that in a second, but there are actual tools out there that can do the work for you, like most of it. Obviously, you still need to know some stuff and you still need to hire the right people to implement certain things, but there are ways to do it that it's not that expensive. And not to mention, if you just by choosing the right platform that you build your website on, you do you're way ahead a lot of people. Like, I'm not in any way affiliated with Webflow, for example, but it's my go-to tool now for quite a time.
The other day, I was interviewing the founder of Red Sweater for my podcast, and he's the Mars Edit, which is a third-party blog editing software. And he also developed a thing called Black Ink, which is an accessible crossword puzzle app. And he was telling me, he said, Max, there are these frameworks now for building apps. And he said the frameworks have gotten so good. He said that as long as people are going to use these frameworks, he said, especially in Apple and iOS, he said it's almost have to try to make things inaccessible in order to do it if you're using the established quality frameworks that are out there. So I agree with you. There are lots of ways to make it easier. There's the W3C school for people who want to teach themselves about web coding and accessibility. There's new online courses every day. There's the International Association of Accessibility Professionals that offers a certification program. There are universities with degree programs. There are social media communities. There are apps like Waze that is free that will let you check your website and see where you stand and try to figure out how much of a need you may have right now to improve accessibility or not improve accessibility. You're right. There are a lot of ways you can do it that don't require you to do everything or don't require huge investments of money. Unfortunately, the prevailing opinion is the opposite. So you're in the minority. I'm going to share a little bit from my friend Alex Sanfilippo, who's also been on my podcast. He is the founder of podmatch.com, and I'm the accessibility advisor to his website. We've been friends for about 5 years now. I've been advising him on accessibility for about four. We had a very open talk about what happened when he told people online that he was going to make Podmatch accessible. He said, Max, I didn't share this with you because I really didn't feel like you should have to carry it. He said, but I can't tell you how many webmasters, how many app developers, how many business owners contacted me directly and said, you're an idiot. This is going to ruin your business. This is going to cripple you financially. This is a horrible idea, and you should change your mind immediately. And he said it wasn't just a few, it was dozens of people, strangers in the software and app development world or in the business owners in the SaaS arena that reached out to him and said he was making a huge mistake. Your opinion and my opinion on how difficult this is, how it is not difficult, it doesn't have to be expensive, is again in the minority among the more established voices out in the world. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to mention this. And I really appreciate you volunteering the fact that it really doesn't have to be hard with all the tools that are out there now.
Yeah, indeed. And it's a bit, I'll say, sad that we are in minority here and still trying to do our part to bring awareness and at the same time to build tools that are accessible and so on. It's at least one step in the right direction. And I feel like even if couple of people that are like listening right now, they take one step further and actually share this episode with someone, and they do as well spreading the word about accessibility. It's something that everyone can like do this small thing.
And I would like to expand on that a little bit for the people in the AI world because we have all these new apps coming online that are supposed to make our lives easier. For example, as podcasters, there are so many that advertise they'll be able to help us with our editing, our social media promotion, or our blog posts, or whatever. However, a lot of these AI based apps that are supposed to simplify things are not accessible to somebody using the internet with a screen reader or with adaptive technology. And this is an opportunity for those companies to stand out against the bigger, more well funded software companies in the arena by investing a little time and money in making their AI driven products accessible. The other thing that they can do, which also will help them stand out, is a lot of people assume that these apps we're using are generating accessible products, services, and content. But if you don't have a way in place to test to see what the results are based on accessible best practices, you could be putting all your users in harm's way, or you could be causing all your users to miss out on potential customers and clients. As this is a way where people in the AI and this software as a service field can get an edge over the big dogs if they're willing to make their apps more accessible and if put a system in place so that the output from those AI projects is also being tested for best practices. And if you can do those two things, then created a huge amount of value that most of your competitors have no interest in.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And sometimes these overlooked things can move the needle in the right direction so powerful that you'll be like, why I didn't invest previously in this? And instead of just having this like perspective shift, like instead of seeing being compliant in terms of accessibility as investing in growing the business and positioning and standing out as someone that is accessibility first company, only that can have a huge impact. And for those who are still reluctant, can you paint the picture of what it means to become an accessibility first business?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that by becoming an accessibility first business, you're becoming a consumer first business, a customer first, a client first, a community first business. We need to see accessibility as part of anything else we would do to make the end customer our focus so that they become customers, they stay customers, they advocate for friends and family to become customers. So I would say that would be where I would start as far as the conversation goes. And then just remind people that we really don't know who is visiting a website or who is using an app. There's nothing on the internet that will tell somebody, hey, you've had X number of blind visitors, or you've had X number of deaf visitors, or there are people using your website who have only got 3 fingers and they got a special piece of technology. There's no way for the website owner to know that. And also, there's no way to know who is influencing a decision or who is making the decision. Just because you may sell a product that you feel like there's no blind person or no disabled person that would ever want to buy your product, that doesn't mean there isn't somebody in that business's decision making process, the family organization, nonprofit organization that has a disability that's doing the research, that's making the purchase, even if they won't be the one using the product or the service. So, since we have no way of knowing who's going to be using our websites, who's going to be interested in finding out more about our products or services, then not making the process accessible is basically telling millions of people that you don't need their business.
I love that perspective, the way you emphasize the client first, because it's the easiest thing in business, right? To think from that perspective. If you don't put your clients first, you don't have a business. If you're just doing a business for the sake of making money, at some point you will fail because it must help people. You must build something that it's beyond the money, it's beyond the revenue, because then the revenue will take care of itself.
Right. And the other thing that most smart business people understand, that it is better for their bottom line to keep customers than it is to constantly chase customers. It's better for their bottom line to keep employees than it is to constantly have to chase employees. If you do the opposite on both of those, you spend a lot more money and make a lot less money. And the truth is, if you're constantly having to expend that kind of effort to generate clients, sales, and revenue, eventually it just becomes unsustainable, not necessarily because the business will fail, but because the people that are responsible for making that push every day will eventually fail. And I like to think about it this way. Back in the day, my first website was brokering used amusement park and carnival rides. And I posted to social media every day. It would be a new listing, an update to a listing, a sale, any type of content I could think of every day. And as long as I was posting content, my website numbers would be really good. But if I, for some reason, went 2 or 3 days without posting content, my website traffic went way down. And that's the thing, is you can have a business without putting the client first, but it takes a lot more effort, a lot more money, and it's a lot more likely to fail over time than a business that is built around the customers first, where they will stay with you, they will promote you, they will even reach out and go, "Hey, if you did this or this, it would make what's a good product even better." And that's actually what I do a lot of times when I reach out to a company about accessibility, is I will usually say, "Here's a couple of things that you're doing really well already, but your site could be so much better in the area of accessibility if you did a couple of things like this." And then I'll tell them, if you connect with me, we can discuss my sharing fully how you could improve the website, because some of it is accessibility and some of it's workflow. And of course, that's another issue around accessibility that is a nuanced thing. It makes it a little more challenging, but it basically means that the best accessibility, the truest embracing of the term or the approach, means that you take the time to find out how people using adaptive technology, or how people living with a variety of disabilities, you try to find out how they navigate the online world so that you can better anticipate the order in which they want to receive the information. I often fill out forms and I'll get down to the bottom of the form and I'll think, man, they could have moved a few of these items around and it would have made a lot more sense. Or worse yet, I get down to the bottom of the form and I click submit and I find out, after I've tried to submit, that there's elements below the word submit that need to be addressed to the form. Or the button for submit is not clickable because it wasn't designed for a keyboard. Accessibility is very important, but I think what you said more than once is, if we think about accessibility as part of focusing on our customers and their needs, then we build a far more sustainable, healthy business that can last for the long term.
Yes, indeed. And I want to dive into that aspect of you navigating, for example, a website, because I think people will better understand both the challenges and the solutions to that they can actually apply in order to act to make things happening.
So for most people using adaptive technology, we have basically three methods of navigating a web page. We can use the tab or the shift tab, which will move us forwards or backwards through any elements, and that would include a heading, a link, a page, a button, an image if it's properly labeled with alt text. That only works if the tab loop is built into the website, which really isn't that hard to do, but for some reason, it's one of those things a lot of people mess up. The next, I think maybe there's four. The next thing we usually will do is we'll navigate by headings and go forwards and backwards through headings. The commands are different depending on whether you're on a Windows machine or a Mac and whether you're using Safari or Chrome. The next option is using the arrow keys in combination with other keys to navigate by characters, words, sentences, paragraphs, screens, or pages. And then finally, we can do a search for a string of text and then route our cursors to that location. So, as I guess you can imagine, we have a much more limited way of navigating the information that's on the website. And if people understand that a little better, it will make it easier for them to create accessible websites. So I appreciate you asking that question.
Yes, it did. And it paint the picture because often when both as builders, like either developers, designers, and as well business owners, we think from the perspective of someone that has the ability to navigate a website or to navigate an app as we do. But in reality, as you vividly painted, is not the case. And for those that are like in that spot right now, that say like, all right, guys, I get it. I really want to do this, but I have no idea where to start. What do you say
And
to them?
I would say first thing is look at your own website. Most people who have websites don't spend a lot of time on the front end of their website looking at how they're currently configured. The odds are if you spend some time on your homepage or your other pages with the idea that you may have some accessibility issues, you'll probably find some things that you can do away with. You may have elements on a screen that don't need to be there. You may have images that are redundant or that don't really tell a story. You may have too many calls to action. You may have too many pages, but these are things you won't see unless you look at your website and really look at it for yourself. I would say after that, Waze is a free website where you can have your website checked to see what the current accessibility standard of it is. It won't fix things for you, but it will tell you what needs to be fixed. And then you can go to Google, you can go to W3C and find tutorials on how to fix things that need to be fixed. There are other websites, there's probably half a dozen, maybe 8 or 9 really reputable quality assurance companies out there when it comes to accessibility. And most all of them have a pre-checker, but of course they'll insist you sign up to their email list and they will try to sell you a paid service. And some of those checkers can, in addition to identifying errors, some of those checkers can fix errors, but they can't fix every error. If you're looking at a free checker or you're looking at using some automation to improve accessibility, I would say think about it just like we used to think about those emails we got from SEO people. I don't know about you, but if I ever got an email saying a guy could put me on the first page of Google, I deleted that puppy immediately, ran the other direction. It's the same thing with accessibility. If somebody tells you that their plugin or their automation can identify 100% of accessibility issues and or can fix them for you, then run because they are definitely overpromising. In general, automation can fix somewhere between 50 and 70% of errors on its own. Usually, even the best automation is going to require somebody to go into the back end of a website and fix probably a third to 40% of whatever issues there may be. But by using a checker to find out the state of your current state of your website, you can then prioritize what you need to fix. And you can either learn how to fix it yourself or hire somebody that is a developer. Now, I used to code websites and I still maintain my own WordPress websites, but I'm not somebody who's going to advertise that I'll fix people's websites. But I can definitely find the accessibility issues if there are any for them. And I really enjoy working with small to medium sized businesses and nonprofits as well as software as a service companies. So you can use the free checkers, you can get an automation. But the other thing about automation is please make sure that the company that provides it has a community of people with disabilities that are advising on how to maintain and improve that automation product. Because if they're not being informed by people representing a lot of the many challenges we live with in day to day life, then they're going to give you a poor product. So that would be something I would say.
So now we paint the picture of the why and the fact that there are tools out there that people can use, like accessibility checkers and so on, to do part of the work. And after that, obviously, there needs to be someone that actually check those out in the backend, implement other stuff, so on. And I would like to understand, how do you help businesses? You mentioned that you love working with small to medium sized businesses to help them out. And if you can paint the picture of who are your ideal clients, at what stage are they when it comes to accessibility, and how specifically you help them to get compliant?
Right. So obviously, my ideal client would be someone who is starting a new business, a new website, or a new app because it's much easier to help them build an accessible product or service from the ground up than it is to have to go back later. But as far as groups of people, I've done very well with people in the software as a service area, working for Less Annoying CRM, for Podmatch. I've had some great conversations with people in the small to medium nonprofit organizations. And I've also had some great conversations with people in the e-commerce field. So I think those are my three favorite areas to work with. I find that I'm a better fit for small to medium sized companies than I am for an enterprise level company because not that I can't do it, but the enterprise level companies are going to want more automation, more systems because they're going to have more content that is built up over a longer period of time that needs to be remediated. They're also going to want to do it much more quickly and have more ambitious plans once they decide to embrace accessibility. Sadly, a lot of the companies that have the budget and the teams in place to really, go all in with accessibility are some of the worst at it. And and I don't know if it's they don't want to spend the money or don't understand why they should spend the money, but I do know there are a lot of huge corporations where their accessibility is just non-existent or what they claim as accessibility is not really what they think it is. I run into a lot of websites that have accessibility statements that are either out of date, out of touch, or straight up lying. I find that small to medium sized businesses appreciate me more. I get more satisfaction out of working with them. They are more likely to accept not only my advice about accessibility, but my advice about proper workflow so that not only do you get something that will pass the WCAG, the Web Content Accessible Guidelines, and the many laws that are based on WCAG as how you determine whether or not somebody is in compliance. But I find that a lot of the small and medium companies are more likely to go, how do we go beyond compliance? I've also seen companies that they only want you to address their homepage, or they only want you to address 3 or 4 pages on a site that may have 5 or 7 or 10 or more pages. I just find it far more satisfying, and I don't know about you, but I can do the work a lot more quickly, and I can provide a better service to my clients if I'm doing work that I really enjoy for people that I have respect and appreciation for. And having spent most of my life operating a small business, rarely as a success, but doing it anyway, I have a lot of respect for people that are trying to build their own stuff out there, trying to start companies out of their basements or their garages or in the middle of the night. while they're still working a regular job. I respect those people, and those are the kind of people I want to work. And I feel like I'm the best person for those people as well because I understand accessibility as a process. I understand it as a collaboration. I understand the possibility that once I explain what the problem is, they or their team may have better answers than I do. I appreciate the idea that sometimes in the short term, done for you is the best option, even though it may not technically be accessibility. So I think these things make me a great fit for small, medium sized organizations. Also, I work in a very simple manner as far as pricing and billing. So there isn't a lot of back and forth that has to take place before I start working on a project. I mean, basically, it's like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to charge you. Do you want it? If you do, then we'll start today. And I give them reports as I go through each page as to what needs to be fixed and why. And if I don't feel like they can understand my explanations, I'll do screen shares or I'll do video or audio recordings because we do have to communicate. We have to understand each other. And I think that's another thing I bring to the table because for me, it's not just about the accessibility. It's a big part of it. It's very important. But I also believe in educating a company's team so that more people within an organization understand best practices. And the last part of this that most companies just don't do for some reason that I totally don't understand is I'm also really happy doing content creation and promotion of a business that's investing in accessibility. So, you put that all together, that's a pretty strong package. Site evaluation, explanation, team education, content creation, business promotion. And by adding those things together, I can give a lot of value to the companies that hire me. And I can keep myself entertained because all of those different phases of accessibility require different skills. And it's kind of like the old assembly lines in Detroit. You may be spending all day building a car, but as long as you're building different parts of the car each day, it doesn't get old.
Exactly. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I love your approach and I love your openness.
If you'd like to reach out to me to find out more about accessibility in general or to consider hiring me as a writer, speaker, or consultant, you can go to theaccessibilityadvantage.com. You can send me an email to Maxwell at theaccessibilityadvantage.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn where I'm Maxwell Ivey. That's IV as in Victor EY. And I love having conversations. So don't feel like you have to be ready to hire me, buy something from me, or book me in order to talk to me. I've always said I would rather answer an awkward question than to make people guess. So I do hope we'll hear from you, have some great new conversations. Maybe you'll be a good future guest for our podcast to talk about your business, what you've learned about accessibility from this podcast, and how it affected your bottom line, how it affected your business growth going forward. Really appreciate this opportunity to come on your podcast, my friend, and look forward to doing it again sometime.
Thank you so much, Maxwell. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining and spending the time with us and for sharing some powerful insights on accessibility. Hope those that are listening are taking action and actually implement them in their own business. Thank you.